We are recording. Let's give a warm welcome to those that are going to be viewing this video. If we can all give a shout out and say hello.
Hello.
It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We want to welcome you to Covenant Calendar Club and hope that you find this this teaching precious and enlightening and helpful to draw us closer to the Father. That's our goal, is to be part of the restoration of all things and establish His kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the computer over to our presenters, and they can get our slides up and running. But I first want to say thank you for the work that you guys have done in putting these slides together. We know that some of the slides take literally hours for you to put together, and making it easy for us to understand. They've gone through most of the hard work of looking up the words, whether they be verbs and adjectives and pronouns and etc. We don't have to do a lot of that. They've done that for us. And so thank you, Charlene. Thank you, Tim. We appreciate you. We love you guys. And let's go ahead and get started.
You want me to start the screen, Mario?
That would be great. Yep, I'm all for it.
So we're going ahead as planned tonight then? Or?
Are we, Charlene? Are we going as planned, or whatever your plan is? Yeah?
Well, we have a lot of review tonight, just a review from everything kind of that we've done. And I hope it's not boring. I hope it is a review. For our new people tonight, or those that have only been here once or twice, it might be good to hear some of this again, especially for our friend Joy, Matthew in, I think he said India. I guess if it's too boring, because you've heard it too many times, you'll have to unmute your mic and just say, let's get with the program. Tim and I sort of outlined some parts that we don't want to skip, which is a few things on the Maseroth, and there is a little quiz at the end today. We'd like to save some time for the quiz. So if it's just too boring, you said we've heard it like 12 times, that's enough, then somebody just let us know, and we'll skip to the important parts and get to the quiz at the end, and then maybe have some time for questions and answers. And Tim's going to teach tonight.
Uh-oh. Okay. We're going to see a whole bunch on creation, on the days of creation, and this is going to have a comparison of the dawn start of the day, and then it's going to go through the scriptures and show accounts of the dawn start of the day compared to each day in creation. There is going to be a little bit of review first, and as Charlene says, you can wave your hand and tell us to speed up if you want.
Okay, before you start, Tim, could I get someone to volunteer, or could I volunteer someone to kind of monitor the chats if someone has a question, to let us know, because I know you can't see your screen.
I'll monitor it.
Well, was that Sylvia?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
Okay, review for Creation Week, Part 1. I got it, my screen is giving me problems here. I've got stuff in the way all the time. Trying to get rid of it. There we go. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, Yahuah created the heaven and the earth. And I just messed up my share screen. What happened?
Oh, that's okay. We'll get it up.
I heard Vivian. Here we go again. We'll try this one more time. Genesis 1:2. And the earth came to be without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. That was chaos and darkness in verse 2a. Genesis 1:2b. and the Ruach moved upon the face of the waters. And this is where light was restored, verses 2b. And next is a 10-point review for day 1 of creation. The narrative of the creation story is most definitely written in order. Thoughts to ponder. Moses was inspired by Yahuah for all the words of the Torah. Is it possible Moses did not develop the narrative of the creation week in order? And if the narrative is not in the correct order, who has the authority to decide what the correct order is? If there is a span of time more than 24 hours in Genesis 1, should Moses have recorded it? The narrative of the creation week is correctly understood only when all the verses are kept in perfect sequence. In order to understand the first 2 verses of Genesis 1, consideration must be given to some things that happened before Genesis 1:1. Yahuah made provision in advance should his gift of choice be exercised in a negative manner. Yahuah knew there would be war in heaven. Yahuah's decisions for what would be created in Genesis 1 were based upon his foreknowledge of what would happen in heaven before creation. Yahuah knew there would be 3 days of creation, 3 days of restoration, and 1 day for communion. And we're going to see this further on in the study. Yahuah also knew when Satan would be cast out of the heavenly domain. Because Yahuah is our perfect creator, is it possible for our perfect creator to create anything that is imperfect? And is that true or is that false? That's something that we really, really need to think about really, really carefully. Can imperfection come out of absolute perfection? That is the question. Genesis 1:1 includes the perfect creation of land, water, air, plants, and the heavenly lights all at once. Psalms 33:9. For he spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast. Nothing was brought forth in Genesis 1:1 that would have injured a living soul, such as animals of the land and sea or mankind. The next events in this narrative occur between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. When Satan and his angels rebelled against their creator, this was labeled as sin in heaven. However, our loving creator did not expel Satan from heaven until he refused to repent. At that point, Satan and his host were cast to this earth. And he, Yahushua, said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. And my question is, why was the word lightning used? And from what I have studied, my research, what I have seen over the years, I believe that that word lightning, it was meant to give us the understanding of a severe impact, because that is exactly what lightning does when it hits. This is the puzzle piece of day 1 that is not written in words at this place in the scripture. The answer to the puzzle is found in Jeremiah 4:23 and the final end time events, where the earth is described as being in total ruin and chaos. Revelation 16. Satan demonstrates his vast demolishing power against the newly created heaven and earth. Beginning in verse 2, the earth came to be without form and void, completely worthless and utter chaos, followed by choshech, darkness on the face of the waters. This choshech, darkness, was not created. It was the result of Satan and his host of angels being cast to this earth. Many of these angels were locked up in this choshech abyss in the beginning, Revelation 9:1-3. Does anybody here have any knowledge about CERN? CERN is that, I don't know how to describe it in layman's terms, but it's a huge machine that's all underground, and it is at that machine, I guess is what I can say, is where these scientists are trying to create a 6th dimension where the portal to the abyss where these fallen angels are will be opened. That is their full intent. That is written, and that has been what they have expressed, why they are there. And it is from where this Hoshek abyss at the beginning, that's when the fallen angels, or a great deal of them, went into the abyss. The Hoshek darkness of Genesis 1:2 was not only a literal darkness such as can be felt, but it was also a chaotic darkness linked to Hades and the abyss, or an underground prison of the subterranean seas. This Hoshek darkness was allowed as Yahuwah's provision to make available a place for the consequences of the original sin. Isaiah 45:7, I form the light and create darkness. Definition for Satan's demolition, Genesis 1:2a. 4 Hebrew terms in Genesis 1:2 include a host of negative definitions: without form and void, and darkness upon the face of the deep. And there's your definitions for Hoshek. This is what you're going to see. There's an awful lot of negative description words there that come out of the individual letters of the Hebrew word Hoshek.
Tim,
Yes?
I'd just like to make a comment. Those are not definitions for just Koshek. They are definitions for without form, void, and darkness upon the face of the deep. All 4 of those terms in Genesis 1:2.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Yahuwah has power over Satan, Genesis 1:2. Yahuwah is all-powerful and much more powerful than Satan. He begins to restore his creation during the remainder of the 12-hour day season. Yahuwah does not need a huge amount of time for restoration as man begins. There is no allowance for a gap theory of 1,000 years between the verses 1 and 2 in the first application of the literal narrative. Day 2 does not begin until Genesis 1:6. Light is restored through the fluttering action of the Ruach cleansing the contaminated waters. Man's feeble attempts at bringing forth a flicker of light is called sonoluminescence. Yahuwah restores light first, Genesis 1:3. That which cleanses must be cleansed first. Everything started with light, as Yahuwah is light. John 1:5. This then is the message which we have heard of him, and declare unto you, that Yahuwah is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Psalms 104:30. Thou sendest forth thy spirit, they are created, and thou renewest the face of the earth. Light is the most basic form of energy, more fundamental than the heavenly light givers. Yahuwah separates light from darkness, Genesis 1:4. The Hoshek darkness came and encapsulated everything. There you see your Hoshek darkness covering everything on the right side. Yahuwah separated his light components locked in this darkness. Besides visible light and good components include invisible light, such as shortwave radiations and longwave radiations. And here is a diagram to show you what type of, all the different spectrums of light. And it shows you under visible there were the ones that we can see. And yet there's so many more portions of what is determined as light that we cannot see with our naked eyes. And it is all these portions of light that Yahuwah extracted out of the Hoshek darkness when he divided the light from the darkness. And many of these things that we cannot see with our eyes are incredibly, incredibly important to our life. Light also includes components of heat, sound, electricity, magnetism, and molecular interactions. These invisible components of light are constant through the day season and the night season of each day. Where would we be today had Yahuah not separated out these good components of his light from Mosheh darkness? Important Hebrew definitions, Genesis 1:5a. Yahuah's work for the day season is complete. Next, Yahuah provides definitions for the two major components of the 24-hour cycle. Yahuah declares in Genesis 1:5a the first Hebrew definitions for the first day, Yom. They are, the day season is 12 literal hours, John 11:9. The night season is 12 literal hours. The full cycle length is 24 literal hours. Yahuah's days in the creation week are not 1,000 years long, nor is there a gap of unaccounted time between the cycles. The many patterns of sevens throughout the scriptures do not support a gap theory in any way. Everything about creation week started here with daylight. Next, Genesis 1:5b, a close review of evening and morning. And we're going to go through evening fairly quickly because we've done so much on it. Yahuah's safeguard, two twilights, Genesis 1:5a. Moving forward. And there was evening and there was morning, one day. In Genesis 1:5b, what is evening and what is morning? Let's first identify these words in the Hebrew language. There is Erev, which is evening, and Boker. And we're going to look at Erev first. It is seen first following the restored light season of creating and restoration. The evening occurs before the Boker morning. So let's examine evening first. And we're going to go through this fairly quickly. To enter, to go in, to go down, became evening, grew dark, sunset. Mixed, to mix, was mingled, and a mixture. And down here we see a mixture, mingled people, mixed, and wolf. And the primitive root is to braid and intermix. Note, the variety of meanings for OT 6154 strongly suggests a mixing or mingling. That's because in the Hebrew, OT 6154 is a cognate with OT 6153, meaning there will be very close similarities. And Gesenius, he gave us Erev, and these definitions: mix, mixture, as mixed, interwoven, mixture, and this one is very interesting, from incessant involved motion. There's a very, very good description of a mixture. We do not see that the Erev evening twilight verb can possibly be the night season, for the night season does not have light from the sun. Erev requires a mixture of light and darkness to form the evening twilight. How can the darkness come first when the requirement for the evening twilight mentioned in Genesis 1:5a requires light for part of the mixture? We will take what we have read and return back to Genesis 1:5b. The sequence of events is laid out quite well. Yahuah has created and restored throughout the first light season of creation, and then the evening arrives. This is the time when the night season, Leil, not Choshek, begins to mix with the light of the first cycle of creation. The light becomes infused with Leil. This is what we normally refer to as twilight. Here is a graphic of what the Hebrew language in the scriptures have declared thus far. Yahuah created and restored on the first half of cycle number 1. The arrival of the twilight mixture, Erev evening, signals the full end of the direct light season only, not the 24-hour cycle. the first 12 hours of Earth's history, creation and restoration of light. Yahushua, the light, withdraws, which initiated the arrival of a Rev evening mixture, which is light being overtaken by the darkness. We now need to consider the word seen in Genesis 1:5, morning, or boker. Here's a refresher. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. Now we're going to look at the full 24 hours of cycle number 1, creation and restoration of light. Again, Yahushua, the light, withdraws. There comes your evening, the arrival of the mixture, the twilight mixture, and your night passes unannounced because nothing happened. That night is Leil. That is the acceptable night darkness, and it passes by unannounced. Here comes your boker. And there was morning, boker, day 1. This word boker becomes ultra important. What on earth does an ox have to do with the start of Yahuwah's 24-hour cycle? The answer will come soon. And here we see Brown Driver breaks. He has definitions for boker. Break of day, the end of night, the coming of daylight, the coming of sunrise, the beginning of day, the bright joy after night of distress, and morrow, next day, next morning. Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. Boker, properly dawn as the break of day, generally morning, early morning, morrow. And the root, 1239, Bachar, it's a primitive root, properly to plow. Why does it have to plow here? What in the world does plowing have to do with morning? We're going to look at this a little closer. To plow. Eric Bissell, who teaches Paleo-Hebrew and has done for quite a few years now, explains the connections from the Hebrew letters to an ox plowing a line in the soil. When the ox is shown the target on the other side of the field, it will walk forward, plowing the soil in a straight line. That line of partition is separating one side from the other. There is still an underlying connection, but the soil surface has been segregated by a visible demarcation one from the other. One side of the furrow belongs to one identity, the plowed. The opposite side of the furrow to the identity of needing to be plowed. Two separate objects are created by a separating action and a specific boundary. Eric also explains boker by referring to a belt buckle. The boker being the buckle itself. The belt goes full circle as in the 24 hours of a cycle, and the boker provides the separation from one cycle to another. Yet the belt buckle, boker, also supplies the connection of one cycle to the next cycle of the week. The buckle effectively divides asunder the weekly cycles. And here's the etymological dictionary of the Hebrew language. You'll see boker, to cleave, to split, differentiate, to break forth, said of the dawn and of light, to abandon, to cleave, to split, properly denoting the breaking through of daylight, to split and to plow. And here's John Parkhurst, and he says, boker, the morning or morning light which springeth forth upon the earth. And so in Luke 1:78, it is said of the spiritual day spring or dawn of the gospel day. And the paleo for morning is boker, is beit, kuf, resh. The beit as a flag, a banner, proof, and mark. Kuf is present, or presence, visitation, conception, robed in righteousness, sunlight on the horizon, to rise up. The Kuf, the Resh, heavens opened, official signatory, and lifted up, putting the Paleo into a statement. The banner of the official signatory appears when the heavens are opened up and the sunlight upon the horizon bathes this earth in robes of righteousness. This is taken from a Paleo Hebrew chart and some of the definitions. It is clearly pointing to the very initial theme of dawn, or initial time of dawn, when the first rays of distant sunlight are stretching above the horizon into the escaping darkness. Dawn, not sunrise. And for anybody who wants to read out of the Hallelujah scriptures, you'll read in Job chapter 3, verse 9, and it declares the eyelashes of dawn. It's a very good description of dawn. And here's Gesenius original again. Morning, or boker, split, penetrate as the dawn, the darkness. Morning, end of night. Coming of dawn, even daylight. Turn of the morning, beginning of day. Coming of sunrise. Time of prayer. Morrow, next day, tomorrow morning. Seek, divide, discern, slit, split, distinguish. And here we see the plowing again. And over here is that ox. In this source, there are many textual references for these definitions. Once again, we see the dividing concept that distinguishes one identity from another. Each weekly cycle is terminated by the arrival of the dawn's rays of light, and the new weekly cycle is ushered in, enveloped with light. The deep inferences of light is a very extensive topic. And here's Barker. To seek, I should say this is Boker again. To seek, search, examine, morning, and herd, horned cattle, oxen. Go down here. A scourging with a thing of ox hide. What does scourging have to do? Go down here. The scourging with a thing of ox hide, what does it do? It splits and separates the skin. The dividing action is seen once again, separating one item from another, yet ultimately with an underlying connection. When Yahuah preserved the Hebrew nation in Egypt, what presents did he use? They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days, while all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. What does Yahushua tell us? John 12:36. While you have the light, believe in the light, so that you become sons of the light. These words Yahushua spoke and went off and was hidden from them. Ephesians 5:8. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Master. Walk as children of light. 1 Thessalonians 5:5. For you are all sons of the light and sons of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. And best of all, Matthew 11:30. For my yoke is gentle and my burden is light.
Amen. Amen.
Yes. Yahusha's Shabbat starts with morning light, not in the darkness of twilight after the sun sets. Yahushua provided preparation evening and night explicitly for us to prepare for the Shabbat. The light is where Yahuah and Yahusha operate and conduct their life. As it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth. Interesting ring, isn't it? Nature gives us very good clues as to when the weekly cycles begin. Maybe we should listen. We have seen the outline for the first cycle of creation in the first 5 verses of the Torah. You probably noticed that in between the evening and morning, there was no mention of a night season. Why? Because the night season was a non-activity season. There was nothing to record. With that in mind, let's look at some graphics to help us understand. Again, as it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth, Matthew 6:10. With the teaching from Yahushua on how to pray, let's look once again at the first cycle of creation, step by step, and then compare it to the fourth cycle of creation. And yes, this is some repetition, but it helps us to understand. This is the full 24 hours of cycle number 1, creation and restoration of light. Yahushua, light, withdraws. Arrival of your Erev, evening twilight mixture. And there came to be evening. There's your Leil, the night. Leil, the acceptable night darkness, passes by unannounced. And there was morning, day 1. Now I want you to note very, very carefully where the arrow points to on that yellow slice, that yellow wedge. That the black arrow points to the very, very, very beginning portion of light. It does not point to the area where the sunrise is about to happen. It is at the very, very beginning when the sunlight just starts to creep above the horizon. That is when your boker, your morning, begins. Boker, there it is, the eyelashes of dawn, Job 3:9. Evening mixture grows dark. Leil, your night. This is the night season that follows Boker, dawn morning, follows the light season, and follows the sunset and the evening. We now see where the Boker, morning belt buckle, releases, splits, divides, separates, detaches, and distinguishes between the former weekly cycle and the new 24-hour cycle. It is at this point that one full 24 hours at the beginning of creation had ended. It is at this point that the next second weekly cycle of creation began with the light. Boker, there's those oxen again. Light. Evening. Your evening twilight mixture. Your night. The ox and the plow place their separating line of division on the earth. And that word boker is the separating and dividing of your 24-hour cycles at creation. And we're going to see more of this throughout here. Are we able to find a scriptural patriarch that exposes the dawn-to-dawn pattern as found at creation on day 1? Genesis 15:9 and 10. Abraham divides and places the sacrifices, chases away the vultures, then goes into an induced trance. And it came to be when the sun went down and it was dark, and that is written clearly in the scriptures, that see a smoking oven and a burning torch passing between those pieces. That was dawn to dawn. And Genesis 15:18 says, on the same day, Yahuah made a covenant with Abram. Now, over here in the light season, when Abraham was doing his portion of the everlasting covenant, it was daylight. Right here in the middle is where the sunset would occur. And Yahuah, as represented as the smoking oven and the burning torch, passed between the sacrificed pieces of animals and between the birds. So Yahuah was directly involved in this everlasting covenant. That's not news to anybody. We know that. However, when Yahuah was involved in this everlasting covenant, it says, on the same day, Yahuah made a covenant with Abram. This sunset in the middle did not change the day. It failed to change the weekly cycle on this occasion. With 3 witnesses, this sunset did not change the day, not even for Yahuah or Abraham. The second cycle of creation, the word bara, create, is not seen again until the 5th day of creation. And Elohim said, let an expanse come to be in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. Yahusha, the light, withdraws, and there came to be a rev. There's your twilight mixture. And your Leil night passes by unannounced. And there is your boker. And there was morning, boker, day 2 completed, dawn to dawn, 24 hours. Will another scriptural patriarch expose the dawn to dawn pattern as found at creation on day 2? Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the deliverance of Yahuah, which he does for you today. Now, if we remember correctly in the scripture, it says that the Israelites looked back and they saw the Egyptians were chasing them. That was in the day season, in the light season. And this is when Yahuah instructed Mosheh to tell them he is going to see the Israelites are going to see their salvation today. Verse 27. And Mosheh stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its usual flow. When? At the break of day, with the Mitzrites fleeing into it. Dawn to dawn. What does the scripture say? Exodus 14:30. Thus Yahuah saved Yisrael that day out of the hand of the Mitzrites. And Yisrael saw the Mitzrites dead on the seashore. This sunset that occurred right here did not change the day. The sunset failed to change the day in this event. The salvation today did not arrive before sunset. The third cycle of creation. Again, bara, create, is absent until the 5th day of creation. Genesis 1:11 on the third cycle. Let the earth bring forth grass, the plant that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. This is Yahuah assembling what he had created on the first day. After the light season of assembly, Yahusha the light withdraws. And there came to be evening. There's your evening twilight again. There's your Leil, night. And there was your morning, the 3rd day, dawn to dawn, 24 hours. More scriptural alignment. Will Mosheh expose dawn to dawn on creation, as same as creation's day 3? Exodus 16:14. And the layer of dew went up, and see, on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance, fine as frost on the ground. Exodus 16:22. And it came to be on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread. Verse 23. This is what Yahuah has said. Tomorrow is a rest, a Shabbat Kodesh to Yahuah. That which ye bake, bake, and that which you cook, cook, and lay up for yourselves all that is left over to keep it until when? Does it say evening? No, it says morning. And again, that is dawn to dawn. And they laid it up until morning, as Mosheh commanded, and it did not stink, and no worm was in it. Why did the manna not stink at sunset? Was Yahuah giving them very, very clear message through their nose of when dawn, or when the new day started at dawn. Okay, day 4. This is an interesting day. Note carefully, it was on day 4 that Yahushua commissioned the sun, the Matzeroth, and the other stars with light, which were all created on day 1. The midst of the week was demarcated with light, making certain that mankind would always know precisely when the midst of the week occurs. And we see that midst of the week in a very prominent location in Daniel 9:27. And I'm quite sure I don't have to mention to anybody on this panel what happened in the midst of the week and what was prophesied.
Yahusha.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mario. Charlene, you want to read this?
Sure. I'd like to draw your attention to something that's really important. Yahushua supplied the light that withdrew, and that allowed the night darkness to mix. This is the Erev, the mixing with the light, and that was on the first 3 days. But on day 4, it was different. The two controlling lights were commissioned into service. It then was the sun which withdrew the providing for the evening Erev, or the evening mixture. This did not happen in the morning. The first time that the sun had anything to do with the mixing was at the evening mixing. So it was sunset at that time, just to look for it.
And the sun was commissioned with light on day 4, so it could facilitate the twilight coming. The 4th cycle of creation. Thank you, Charlene. Bara is absent until the 5th day of creation. So we are not going to see any creating in this day. And Elohim made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And there we are. The sunlight withdraws after a light season of assembling his creation and commissioning things with light. The sunlight withdraws, and there came to be evening. There's your twilight mixture again. And that follows the light season. Here comes your Leil, night season. And there is Boker. And there was morning, the 4th day completed. Dawn to dawn, 24 hours. Okay, this is an interesting one. This one absolutely fascinated me when I started studying this. Jonathan's battle, 4th cycle alignment. The Philistines are once again tormenting Israel. Jonathan decides to take matters into his own hands after receiving authority from Yahuah. The time frame, 1 Samuel 14:1. And it came to be 1 day. That is the time frame here. It specifically says 1 day. Verse 12. And Jonathan said, come up after me, for Yahuah has given them into the hand of Israel. And they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer was putting them to death behind him. And go up to verse 23. Thus Yahuah saved Israel that day, and the battle passed over to Beth Awen. The battle occurred within one 24-hour period. Now we're going to get into some details on this day. Saul's evil proclamation. Because of Saul's foolishness, Israel's warriors were waging war on empty stomachs. 1 Samuel 14:24. Cursed be the man who eats food until evening, and I have taken revenge on my enemies. Verse 27. Nobody was allowed to eat. That was the rule. But what happened here? Verse 27, but Jonathan had not heard that his father had taken an oath of the people, and he stretched out the end of the rod that was in his hand, and dipped it in a honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes lit up. Who do you think supplied that honeycomb? I think Yahuah purposely supplied that honeycomb because there was a lesson to be taught here. Let's continue. The famished men were butchering animals and eating them raw because of extreme hunger. See 1 Samuel 14:32. Saul, upon hearing of this transgression, commanded them to bring the animals, butcher, and cook them according to the Torah before consuming them. It was in the night season at this point in time, verse 34, and it clearly states it was the night season. Okay, remember, that means the sunset had passed. Make careful note of that. Saul had asked Yahuah that night for permission to go fight the Palestinites, or the Philistines. Yahuah did not answer the request for direction. Saul knew from Yahuah's silence that there was a serious problem in the camp. Lots are thrown to identify the offender. Jonathan is identified as having disobeyed Saul's order. Now we're going to do a visual scripture alignment. From Samuel 14. Jonathan eliminates some of the Palestinites in the morning. The battle ensues. Saul undertakes a serious mistake / oath. Expending massive amounts of energy through the day, the men in the army are famished for food. Jonathan innocently eats honey and is rejuvenated. This is the day season, or the light season, I should say. Night season arrives. 1 Samuel 14:34. So every one of the people brought his ox with him, when? That night, and slaughtered it there. Okay, again, the sunset has passed. 1 Samuel 14. Here's more visual. Jonathan had eliminated some Palestinites in the morning. Verse 39, for as Yahuah lives, who saves Israel, though it be in Jonathan my son, he shall certainly die. And that was what Saul commanded, what he declared as a result of breaking his order. And it did not matter who it was, the person that ate food was going to die. Again, dawn to dawn. Verse 45, should Jonathan die, well, let me say, this is the voice of the Israelite army, the men who were in the heat of battle and stopped to eat. Should Jonathan die, who has wrought this great deliverance in Israel? Far be it. As Yahuah lives, let not one hair of his head fall to the ground, for he has wrought with Elohim. When? This day. And when did he fight? When did he do his battle? By himself, with authorization from Yahuah. His battle was in the morning, after the dawn. The sunset passed, and they were butchering their animals at night. And Saul wanted to kill, he wanted to take Jonathan's life for breaking his rule. But the Israelite army, the spokesman, declared that it wasn't going to happen because Jonathan had fought for Yahuah in this day, starting at dawn. The sunset did not change this day in this event. And I'm going to ask you, how many times can the sunset fail to change a day before it becomes extremely suspect? The Israelite army in the heat of battle realized the threat of death to a highly respected leader, Jonathan. The Israelite warriors witnessed that they too agree with the creation format of a dawn to dawn for a 24-hour cycle. Dawn to dawn is written in the Torah concerning the fourth day of creation. Now, back to the fourth cycle of creation. What is the lesser light? Genesis 1:16, and Elohim made two great lights. The greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night, the Mazzaroth constellations, and the stars, which are the individual stars. Briefly, what brief sample of factors reveal that the lesser light of Genesis 1 is the Mazzaroth? Go to Job 38, 31 to 33. Do you bind the bands of Kima or loosen the cords of Kesil? It is a fact that the stars in the belt of Kesil are extremely slowly spreading apart. Continuing with Job. Do you bring out the constellations in its season? Or do you lead the bear with its sons? The context is the Mazzaroth constellations. And if you want to see the word Mazzaroth written in your scriptures, you look that up in a King James version and you will see the word Mazzaroth written there. Next verse, Job 38:33. Do you know the laws of the Shemayim, or do you apply their rule over the earth? Their rule? Psalms 19, 1-7 has testimony about the Mazzaroth. What entity timed the birth of the Hebrew nation? Genesis 17:21. Charlene, you want to read this, please?
Yes. It says, but my covenant I established with Isaac, whom Sarah is to bear to you at this appointed time next year. And then Genesis 18:14. Is any matter too hard for Yahuah? At the appointed time, I am going to return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah is to have a son. And then in Genesis 21:2, so Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age. When was it? At the appointed time of which Elohim has spoken to him.
And how do we find these appointed times? These appointed times are determined by the Tekufa in the Mazzaroth. The Tekufa, equinox, depends directly upon the Mazzaroth to determine the accurate timing on Yahuah's covenant calendar. The Mazzaroth declares the full plan of salvation in picture form every 24 hours in the sky. And I highly, highly recommend to anybody, if you do not know what the Mazzaroth is, please search it out and study it very, very carefully, because every 24 hours from Genesis 1 till Revelation 22 goes by the sky every 24 hours. That story is written in the sky in picture form. You do not need to know a language to understand it. It's just incredible. The Mazzaroth delivers the light both physically and probably more importantly, spiritually to this earth. The Mazzaroth is the light that rules the night season. The moon has no light. The moon does not rule the night. In fact, it is absent quite a bit of the night, quite a bit of the month. Jeremiah 31:35. Thus saith Yahuah, who gives the sun for a light by day, and the laws of the moon, and the stars for a light by night. Becomes pretty clear what the second light is. It's written right in the scriptures, if only we will pay attention. Who stirs up the sea and its waves roar. Yahuah of hosts is his name. The Matzeroth, being the lesser light of Genesis 1:16, has been briefly covered here. Okay, we're going to move on to the fifth cycle of creation. Yahusha had been assembling elements on the second, third, and fourth days. The word bara, to create, is not recorded there. Now, on day 5, Yahusha once again begins his creating activities. Let's look at it briefly. The fifth cycle of creation, bara, create, is once again seen in these texts. Verse 20, and Elohim said, let the waters teem with shoals of living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth on the face of the expanse of the Shemayim. The sunlight withdraws, allows the twilight mixture, the mixing of light and darkness to occur. There's your twilight mixture. There's your Leil, night season, that follows the twilight mixture. Can anybody guess what that is? And there was morning, Boker, the fifth day completed at dawn. 24 hours, dawn to dawn. I'm going to back that up a second here. Down here, it says the fifth day completed. This word completed is going to become extremely important in our count to the Omer topic. We're going to see that, and we're going to be discussing that a bit. It's very, very important when a day is completed. There's a little bunny rabbit trail. A decapitation provides more scriptural alignment. How can a decapitation have anything to do with scriptures? 1 Samuel 5:2. And the Pelishtites took the ark of Elohim and brought it into the house of Dagon and put it by Dagon. 1 Samuel 5:3. And the Ashdodites rose early in the morning, that's Boker, and saw Dagon falling on its face to the ground before the ark of Yahuah. So they took Dagon and put it in its place again. That is dawn to dawn. Dagon's first 24-hour cycle completed beside the ark of Yahuah. Now the next slide is going to pick up right here on this blue marker for dawn on the next slide. Same morning, repeated from the last slide, 1 Samuel 5:3, and the Ashdodites rose early in the morning, Boker, and saw Dagon fallen on its face to the ground before the ark of Yahuah. So they took Dagon and put it in its place again. That was in the light season. 1 Samuel 5:4. And when they arose early on the morrow morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of Yahuah. And the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. Morning, Boker. There's your light season. Your sunset occurred here. Your night season happens, and here's your dawn. Dawn to dawn. The very two Hebrew words, morrow and morning, which is Mokeroth and Boker, are used to pinpoint with absolute accuracy the dawn start of a new 24-hour cycle. If you do not understand the definitions of these words, it is imperative to research them fully. Please, not just in Strong's, but also looking in other credible sources is just as important as knowing the correct, untainted definitions. Who and what were created on the first preparation cycle, the sixth day. Thoughts to ponder. The sixth cycle of creation started at dawn. The first preparation cycle of creation ended at dawn. Can we find scriptural alignment in the death and burial of Yahusha? Hint. Miriam of Magdala, Miriam of Yaakov, and Shalomo bought a second batch of spices and ointments. Here we are, the sixth cycle of creation. There's your late season. And what did Elohim do? He said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, livestock and creeping creatures and beasts of the earth according to its kind." And it came to be so. And Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, he created them in the light season. Again, the sunlight withdraws, allowing the Erev mixture of daylight and darkness to mix and cause a mixture called Erev. There's your Leil night season where nothing happens. And there was morning, the sixth day completed. Do I need to say it again? Dawn to dawn, 24 hours in creation account. Let's search the scripture for alignment in the death and burial of Yahusha. Was it also a sixth cycle preparation day when the ladies bought the second batch of spices and ointments, intending to continue embalming the body of Yahusha, first cycle morning? Those verses you'll be able to look up, and this will give you very pertinent information on these. The sacrifices and oblations ceased in the midst of the week, Daniel 9:27, which was the fourth cycle marked by light at creation. The following cycle was the fifth cycle, the first yearly appointed time of the unleavened bread Sabbath. Luke 23:53-56 reveals that Yahusha was buried during Abib 14 Passover night, and the ladies returned home before the Sabbath, G 2020, Epiphosko, grew light. Luke also indicates rather positively that the ladies observed the Sabbath according to the Torah. Since the fifth cycle of creation began and ended at dawn, we know for certain that the sixth cycle also began at dawn. These would then have kept the first appointed time, the Sabbath, see Luke 23:54, of unleavened bread, the fifth cycle, until dawn. It is at dawn of the sixth cycle, the preparation cycle, that the ladies were able to, according to the commandments of Yahuah, purchase the second batch of ointments and spices. Luke 24:1. And on one of the Shabbatot, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. Shabbatot is one of the 7 days of the week, by definition and proven solid by Scripture. Question, and I want you to think about this very, very carefully. If the ladies rested on the Sabbath, according to the commandments of Yahuah, how did they purchase the spices and ointments, arrive at the tomb at dawn on the first cycle of the week, and bring the second batch of spices already prepared? I have a study that specifically goes through this in very, very detail. It's very, very interesting. Quite simple. The ladies purchase spices and ointments on the sixth cycle, the day after the first Sabbath of unleavened bread, which was also the preparation cycle for the following seventh day Sabbath. Is there any better day than a preparation day to purchase, mix, and prepare the spices for burial? Is it possible that Yahuah had this planned from the foundations of the earth? Yes, the sixth cycle of creation has witnesses in the life and burial of Yahusha, showing alignment that dawn started and ended the 24-hour cycles of creation. Yahusha lived and died, witnessing to this fact. Okay, now it gets really interesting. What about the seventh cycle of creation, the seventh-day Sabbath? When did or does it start and end? The scriptures documentation after the sixth cycle, starting with Genesis 2:1. Thus the Shemayim and the earth were completed and all their array, including the building of man. Questions. Had man received the Ruach of life at this point? The scripture tells us that creation was finished or was completed. What remained for Yahuah to finish? Genesis 2:2. And on the seventh day, Elohim completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Yahuah's Shabbat instituted at creation. There is your light season. And Elohim barak the seventh day and made it Kodesh, because on it he rested from all his work which Elohim in creating had made. I change not. Very pertinent scripture, Malachi 3:6. The sunlight withdraws, and we know what comes next. When the sunlight moves out of the way, the evening comes in. The twilight mixture of light and darkness occurs. There's your Leil, night season. There is Boker, morning, the Sabbath day completed. Dawn to dawn, 24 hours from your creation account. Do we have witnesses to the dawn seventh-day Sabbath at the time of the death of our Mashiach? If Yahusha lived and died according to the Torah and lived out a dawn-to-dawn pattern at his death, what do the scriptures declare about this situation? For where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the what? Be the death of a testator. For a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Hebrews 9:16 and 17, KJV. What were some of the final words of Yahusha before he died? So when Yahusha took the vinegar, he said, "It has been accomplished." And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. Yahusha had precisely fulfilled the will of Yahuah without a flaw. We saw where the creation account testified to a dawn-to-dawn seventh-day Sabbath. What witness did Yahusha leave for a legacy after his death? Abib 14, Passover light season and the violence done to Yahusha HaMashiach. Joseph of Ramathaim asks for the lifeless body of Yahusha in the evening after the sun had set. And here we see Mark's version, what he tells us how he writes, and he says, and when evening came, when the sun was down. That's how he thinks, that's how he wrote. Yahusha's body was not asked for until the evening had come, according to Mark, and that is according to even the Hebrew edition of Matthew. So it was after sunset that the body of Yahusha was even requested. Luke 23:53 and 54. And taking it down, He wrapped it in linen and laid it in a tomb hewn out of rock, where no one was yet laid. And I pause here because I want you to read these words very carefully. And it was the preparation day, and the Sabbath was approaching. Okay, there's dawn to dawn. When the sunset occurred, right here, and I hope you can see my mouse, when the sunset occurred, it was after this that Joseph of Ramathaim asked for the body of Yahusha. And yet, Luke tells us it was still the preparation. This sunset did not change the day. It failed to change the day. Once again, another sunset failure. When it says, when Luke recorded, the Sabbath was approaching, that word approaching is epiphosko, and its meaning is to grow light. Now I ask you, does the evening grow light, or does the evening grow dark? If the Sabbath ended after the sunset, it would grow dark. But yet this tells us the Sabbath was growing light. It was epiphosko, the Sabbath was about to grow light. This sunset is a failure in terms of changing the day of the week. Yahusha testified by dying that his Passover, Abib 14, day of death, started at dawn. See John 19, 13, and 14. Joseph of Ramathaim carried out the Torah patterns by burying Yahusha during the night season hours of Abib 14. See Exodus 12, 6 to 10, where they're making certain that the remains of the Passover lamb was taken proper care of and secured out of sight before the boker, the morning light. It started at dawn and it ended at dawn. Yahusha was crucified. He died here. The sunset passed. Joseph requested the body. They buried him Abib 14 night. And the Sabbath, first Sabbath of unleavened bread, began to grow light. The Sabbath was approaching. It was epiphosko. It was going to grow light. Even the first Sabbath of unleavened bread began with a dawn start. Yahusha testified to his will and then died, securing the Torah pattern for eternity. Please allow me to submit to you. The Passover cycle started at dawn as announced by John. The first Sabbath of unleavened bread started at dawn, documented most clearly in Luke by the burial process. The ladies were able to purchase spices and ointments on the preparation day before the Sabbath. Then, by a multitude of witnesses, the seventh-day Sabbath started at dawn. Will there be supporting witness to this? What does Matthew document? In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to the sepulchre. There is the second time this word epiphosko is used in the scripture, and it's only used 2 times. And each time the word has a very clear meaning of to grow light. So the end of the Sabbath, the end of the 24 hours, end of the 24-hour Sabbath, it ended as the dawn of the first day of the week began. The Sabbath in 28:1 is recorded as ending at dawn. Therefore, it had to start at dawn. Question: does Matthew 28:1 mirror creation's week divine pattern of dawn to dawn? A brief summary. Charlene, do you want to read this?
Yes, I will. 6 times it's recorded in Genesis 1 that Boker, or the morning, stopped or ended the previous 24-hour cycle, and it also started the new 24-hour cycle. There are many multiple witnesses throughout the scriptures reflecting the dawn-to-dawn pattern of Yahuah's cycles of the week, and I think we've got about 35 witnesses. Tim and I were going to be satisfied with just 2 or 3 when we started out, but there's around 35 that we have found. Number 3, on the 24-hour period that involved Yahuah and Abraham in the making of that everlasting covenant, the dawn-to-dawn pattern prevailed. That is exceptionally important because that is part of this everlasting covenant that we're talking about. And Yahushua lived out his covenant calendar while on this earth. He might not have said it in the red words in the scriptures, but he definitely did through his miracles, through his parables, through his ministry, and especially through his death, his burial, his resurrection, and ascension. It's all there. So we're ready now to do a little quiz, and we'll have Tim turn the slides and just see. And you can take your mics off mute, and we'll have some interaction here. I'll just start the first one for Tim. I found this little diagram on the internet. It is labeled night. And I think what the author was trying to do was to show that on this color scheme that the top part of this diagram is the night, and the bottom part where you see the yellow would be actually where the sun would be. So the chart that's shown here, is it showing true or false when the day begins? And it might be a little bit tricky,
False.
but I want you to look at it closely and tell me, is the chart showing the twilights as belonging to the night season or the day season? Look at it really carefully.
False.
I think it's the day season because you have a mixture in there of both the light and the dark.
But look where he's got sunrise, where he's indicating the sunrise is. It's a little tricky.
Twilight's before sunrise.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe Tim can show with his pointer mouse that he's actually got the morning twilight and the evening twilight on the night season part of the day, because he has sunrise, and the sunrise is going to be in the bottom part where your yellow orangey colors are. So it appears that he's got the twilights connected to the night, he or she, whoever did it. It looks like the twilights are connected to the night season instead of the day season, to me, to my eye.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I was looking at the color, at the color below, thinking it's the sun and the dark above.
it's a tricky chart.
If he would have had sunrise on top of the morning twilight or whatever, I don't know. It's just something to look at because people build charts and they think it's clear to them, but when I look at it, I'm going, that's a confusing chart to me.
It is, yeah, it is.
But we have a couple more charts, so let's look at the next one.
Go ahead, Charlene.
I think there's 6 of them. Do you want to go ahead, Tim?
You go ahead.
Oh, he's passing all the hard work to me. So this is quiz number 2. Someone did a really nice watercolor. They were trying to show the different twilights. There's 3 of them. There's a civil twilight, a nautical twilight, and the astronomical twilight. And it goes by degrees. I don't know if you can see it there, but the astronomical twilight is 18 degrees below the horizon. And the nautical one, I believe, is, does it say 8 or 9? And then the civil is 4 or 6. Different people will say different things. But anyway, they've got these twilights. Your eye can pick up the civil twilight, no problem. The nautical twilight is what the sea captains use. The astronomical twilight, I believe that your eye can pick that up if you have no light pollution in your area. You need to watch for it though, but these are all twilights. So I think there's another question for this. Just look at the chart where he's got the horizon. Have they put the twilights in the night season or in the day season?
In the night season.
Yes. And we learned that twilights, because they have light, always are connected to the day season. The sun is below the horizon. That is correct. That part's correct. But those twilights actually belong to the day season, not the night season. So does the chart correctly show that the twilights belong to the day season?
No.
I would say no.
Mm-mm.
What do you think?
No. No.
No.
All right. Quiz number 3. Some of you have probably seen this. I asked permission from Torah to the Tribes to use this chart because they do have it up on their website. And it is labeled as the first Jewish day. You can see where they have the bracket up there. And here is the question. Is the chart showing the correct placement for the day start according to the Jews? If not, what's wrong with it?
It shows according to the Jews.
Do you see anything wrong with this chart?
Yeah.
Everything is wrong with that chart.
Okay, somebody tell me what's wrong with the chart. This is a quiz.
The day does not start in the evening at sunset or the twilight. It starts in the morning. In the morning.
Okay, that's one thing that's wrong. What's another thing that's wrong?
They're missing an evening and a day. Oh no, they're missing an evening.
Well, Tim is trying to give you a clue. He's got his cursor little mouse running in a circle there.
They have a whole period of light before they begin the creation.
There's
Yeah.
no day.
We're actually going to be looking at this again in comparison to the other 2 portions of the chart. This is only the first one. So just keep this in mind. Let's go to the next one. It'll be the next portion for quiz number 4. Now, this is, and I don't really quite understand this, but this is labeled the first Messianic day. And the question is this chart showing the correct placement for the first Messianic day start? And if not, what's wrong with it? And we've given you enough information in all the presentations over the last 6 weeks. See if you can pick up what's going on here. If not, we'll go to the next slide.
They have it reversed. The light was before the darkness.
Okay. That's very good answer.
Evening
Keep
should be
that in mind. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
What did you say, Kay? I missed what Kay said.
Well, the evening should be moved over before it says day 1 of creation. Because the evenings are before and after day.
on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, keep that in mind. We're at quiz number 5 slide. This is the last portion of that chart. And whoever the author is of these charts, I'm not sure who it is, but this is what they're saying for the day start for Yahuah's covenant calendar. They're saying this. So now there's some questions here. Let's go through the questions. Surely this chart is showing the correct placement for day start. Now the question is yes or no.
No.
That's right. The answer is no. In case you don't understand, we'll just hold on to that.
If
Now
that-
here, did Yahuah's,
If that was the first day, because in the first day there was, he created in the day, right? So there was evening and then morning and next day.
Created in the daytime all the time.
Yeah, but on day 1 was different than all the other ones because he created in the day and said evening, in the morning, and the next day. So I would say that would be pretty close to accurate. If he created in the day, that day, and then there was evening and the night, and then the morning the next day.
Okay, Mario, do you want to go through with what you see on the chart? There's some scriptures there.
In Genesis 1:2.
Yeah.
I mean, according to the sword, or according to where? What?
Okay, let me help you out a little bit. On the chart, it starts with darkness. That's where it starts. The first place that we have darkness mentioned in the scriptures is at Genesis 1, verse 2. It's the beginning part of verse 2. It's the first half. That's why the little A is there. Is everybody in agreement with that? That's where darkness is first mentioned.
Yes, Genesis 1:2.
Then in the next block, it has day 1 of creation as the light portion of the day. The very first place that you see the light being restored is in the last half of verse 2. That's why the B is there. Verses 2 to 3 is where light is mentioned in restoration.
Now, when I read that chart, I look at where it says day 1 of creation. I look at that as being Genesis 1:3. Elohim said, "Let there be light." And then he separated the day from the night. And then there was evening and morning, the first day.
I agree. There's nothing in 2 that mentions anything about light.
Yeah, I agree with
Verse 3.
Yeah, that's how I see it too, Don.
So
There isn't.
Yahuah do his creating in the darkness?
What's that?
Did Yahuah do his creating in the darkness?
No.
That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that light came to be in the 3rd verse.
Right.
Then
If I read it straight from here, it says, Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And Elohim said, "Let the light was good," and Elohim divided the light from the darkness. And there became, and Elohim called the light day, and darkness he called night. And there became evening, morning, the first day. So I think if they just took the word day off of that, day 1, and just put creation, and then on the next one where it says day 2, if they wrote day 1 there, it'd be more accurate.
There's something else wrong with the chart. Would you look carefully at the bracket?
The bracket.
The bracket is not correct.
Ella has her hand raised also. Go ahead, Ella.
Yes, hi. What I noticed is that day 1, there should be a little thingy there that says dawn.
Yes.
And then the evening, it should go back a little bit and it should say dusk or twilight. Am I right?
Yes.
I think that would be
Well,
more right.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
But what have they done with the morning after night 1? Look where the morning is with that bracket.
Yeah, it doesn't belong with day 1. Day 1, it should go into day 2.
That's right. That's right.
This bracket should end right here.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to show you is that when you look at charts, you have to look at them carefully. Don't forget, it's a puzzle, a riddle, and a secret, and you have to break the code. So, charts are not easy to build, but you learn a lot from building charts. So we really encourage you to do it. That's why Tim had a lot of charts. When you start building a chart, you will learn a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's another question on this slide or if we should go to the next one.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can I
there we
put in
go.
for a second?
We've covered that 4th question.
Yes, we have.
Does the morning belong to the day? Yes.
Go ahead, Charlene.
What was that?
Go ahead.
Yep, we're okay. This is the last tier quiz. All three of these charts have one thing in common that is not correct. Do you know what it is?
And Tim's pointing darkness, 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 but I'm not sure.
Darkness.
None of the charts have from evening to evening in the same bracket as a day, because each day has to have 2 evenings, correct?
Say again?
Each day has to have 2 evenings, a twilight in the morning and a twilight when the sun goes down after the full sun of the day.
For a 24
I would rather,
right? Yeah, for a 24-hour cycle.
Yes.
Yes.
I would rather hear you say 2 mixings rather than 2 evenings.
Yes.
Well, the morning is, in my mind, is not an evening, it is a mixing. So it would be
Okay.
better to say 2 mixings because that's the root word, okay? A rev can mean a mixing. A rev can be, now remember we did this, a rev can mean mixing as a verb, or a rev can mean evening as a noun. So when you say 2 evenings, let's say 2 mixings, because that would be more correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think there's another animation here, Tim, if you want to bring it up.
Now, on the first day, though, there was only 1 evening. Is that correct? On the very first day.
Yes, that is correct, because the day started with light, boom. There was no morning twilight, because a mixing has to have light and night. When Yah came that first day, it was his light. That was the only day that was different from all the other days, is his light started just boom, no mixing. But what I wanted to show on this is that the darkness here is only represented in Genesis 1:2, the first part of verse 2. There is nothing here on this chart to represent Genesis 1:1. Now, I know that might be a little bit controversial, but the way that I'm seeing this is if you don't have Genesis 1:1, you have no way to explain that darkness there. This whole story starts with verse 1 in Genesis 1. It doesn't start with verse 2. So there's nothing on this chart to indicate anything about Genesis 1:1. Does somebody else have a comment?
I do not, myself, I do not see how darkness can be first, because when Yahusha arrived at the scene of creation, he is light. There just was light from him.
Yeah.
He can't, he can't separate himself from light because he is light.
In the
I should say
beginning.
he can't do that. He's possible. He does all things, no question.
Yeah. So
He is light. So when he arrived on the scene to create, there was light, period.
in the beginning, Elohim. There's light.
Yes.
Hurrah. Mhm.
I mean, no. In the beginning, Elohim. Elohim is light. So
Yes. So that's,
I'm gonna disagree with that. That's not what the scriptures say.
light was before even bara, because he is light.
It says in the beginning he created the Shamayim and the Eretz, or the earth.
what is Yahuah or Yahusha? What is he? The scripture tells us many times that he is light.
Okay, but I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about his creation of the planet Earth, which is what Bereshit is discussing.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Yep.
we did not have time, or we did not take time last week to go into a further study on the Shamaim and the Mayim. The waters in verse 1 are different than the waters in verse 2. There was a change between those waters in verse 1 and the waters in verse 2. We did not take time to go into that. So that will have to be something that you research on your own, and we can help you with what we have found.
Verse 1 doesn't talk about the Mayim. It talks about the heavens and the earth. But then when you go into verse 2, it very clearly says that darkness was on the face of the earth, and that the Ruach was moving on the face of the waters.
Were you with us last week on our study? I don't remember.
What?
Were you with us last week on our study?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. What we have decided is that we won't make this a controversial issue because it entails a lot of study. We just wanted to put out there something for you to grasp onto or to mull over or to massage. The only way that we had understanding of this was actually from Bradford Scott. I listened to his 8 CDs on day 1 of creation. He has 8 of them. It's 10 hours of lecture. It was the only way that I could understand it. So I would highly recommend that take a little look at some of the things that he has. It's very good as a Hebrew instructor.
One of the things that's embedded in verse 1 that we don't see in the English, you're only going to see it in the Hebrew, is it says that in the beginning Elohim created, then it says Aleph Tav. So it's Bereshit bara Elohim Aleph Tav. And in the Kleins, if you look up the first 2 meanings in Kleins, in that bara also is son, S-O-N, and seed. And First John points us back to that, back to in the beginning, the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. And that spoken word, that light, was there from the beginning. So the light was present, and through him and by him all things were created. So it shows that his presence, that Aleph Tav, Yeshua, the light of the world, was there present in the beginning.
Yeah.
And seeing that it also, in that word bara, created, there's a picture in that, in the created, and then we, like him, procreated. And you see it when you, in that, the mayim, the water that has some of the dirty connotations, one being urine. When a seed is planted or created, much like a seed is planted in the womb, when we procreate, those waters, by the time the baby is born, 100% of that amniotic fluid is urine. So it becomes something that's out of there. But Abba planted that seed. He put something in there that was going to grow so that he can birth it. So even that Ruach hovering over the waters, when you see that hovering, one of those meanings is brooding like a bird, the dove, the Ruach. A bird only broods when it's ready to hatch something, when it's ready to birth something.
And can you elaborate, Sylvia, too, on from there, it goes, here we are in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning Elohim bara Aleph Tav. And then when we move into Genesis, or into Revelations, the first words that came out of Yahushua's mouth
is, I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, that he is the Aleph Tav. He was showing he's there from the beginning because he was the lamb that was slain from the foundations of the earth.
Well,
So him being the light is that presence. So we see that he put something in there. He was birthing it. So even for it to become something, that wasn't good, his plan was still even in part of that. Just like when he births something in the womb, the baby is formless and void. Those cells are multiplying. They're constantly until that baby is fully formed and a birth is done, and then the waters split. You see it. You see the picture again at the Red Sea, where the great tribulation with Pharaoh. You can do some digging, even Pharaoh backwards. The word is also a picture of the birth canal. It's that tight squeezing, that tribulation, those labor pains, Jacob's troubles, you would say, that squeezing into that tight, narrow verse, but it's that very thing that is going to birth, and that's how Israel was birthed. That's how life is birthed. We see that repeatedly. Even the water Mayim, the earthly waters, that the dirty water there. You see the Mem, which is also a picture of the womb. It means chaos, blood, water, but it ends with a Sophit Mem, which is a closed womb. So we see a birthing process in that. It says the first to open the womb. It says, he said, Israel is my firstborn. You see the birth of Israel as he brings them out of Egypt, as they go through those tribulation times. We see that again as he delivers us in the last days, there is that tribulation we will go through. It's going to be a birthing as we go through that.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is that there can be a lot of ways to view that verse 2.
Yeah.
I have
Very
a
good,
question.
Sylvia. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have,
Sylvia, I was just going to mention, if you read the Bible in Hebrew, you'll find Aleph Tav throughout the scriptures, and it's never interpreted.
Absolutely. And you see it connected often with other letters because you see it again. You see the Vav, Aleph Tav before the earth.
Right. They'll add a letter before it, and then they might translate it as and or the or whatever, but we know that's not what it stands for.
Right. You know, it's very interesting. There is, and I forget the gentleman's name, does the Aleph Tav Bible. It's not the Aleph Tav Sefer. It's one he's writing it out. But if we understand that Aleph Tav is Yeshua, and we read it out, and many times it says Aleph Tav Yahuah Elohim. So it shows just exactly who he is, that is one. And when you read it with that Aleph Tav in there, boy, I'm telling you, these scriptures would just come alive.
Yeah.
And you see it connected to Esau's name until he sold his birthright. You won't see it connected to his name after that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, Sanford. Vivian got it. Sanford does it.
I think Sudi had a question or a comment.
yes, I do have a question. In the Hallelujah scriptures, in verse 2, it says, and the earth came to be formless and empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Okay, if the earth became darkness, what did it become darkness from?
Yes, right, exactly.
If it was already dark, how could it become darkness?
That's a good question. Anybody answer?
I think part of it's in the definition, in addition to being that like dark you see with your eyes. You know, I mean, there's ignorance, sorrow, misery. That's what sin does. That's what the enemy brings. That's what sin brings.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
you know, Yeshua bringing that light to us is to remove that chaos. It's to bring us out of that misery, that sorrow, to have that hope, that joy in him. You know, you can, if you do in the, Tim, I don't know if you've looked at this in the word for joy, the simcha, you can almost see the layout this in each of the letters, where you have one of that is that the fire, one for that sheen, what is the fire, that pressing down in simcha, and you see that in the tribulation, that pressing into that narrow place, and then the men, that narrow place being in that water in the midst of that chaos. And then the chet, you have that, the fet, you have that separation, because now that after that birthing, you're going to separate what's inside from what's outside, because the womb is only safe for the baby to form for a period of time. Then there must be a birthing, or the baby will die if it stays in the midst of that chaos, that water.
And it sure is a joy. It sure is a simcha when it arrives, huh?
Right. And then you have the hay. That's that breath, that baby, when it comes out, it takes that birth breath. It sees the light for the first time, you know, and it says after that birthing, you know, it's painful in the moment. And I think of that scripture, you know, there's mourning in the night, but there's joy in the morning. So I think when he tells us to count it all joy when you go through various trials and temptations, or various trials and testings, it's because we know the trying of our faith, that's what's going to produce life. That's what's going to mold us. That is a picture of being molded by that potter, by the clay.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
Another that kind of testifies to it in Psalm 139, it says, I saw your unformed body. And that unformed, that word is used once, it's golam. Well, golam is also the Hebrew word for pupa. So we see that, you know, that, and I likened it to when he's planting something, that seed that's growing, but then the water is going to come polluted, but there's going to be a birthing out of that. Is the same thing of when the caterpillar is laid on the leaf. It's going to eat and munch its way through until it grows, and it continually puts off that old man, that old flesh until it goes through that pupa stage. In the Golam, they say with Jewish folklore for Golam that it's an anthropomorphic object specifically made of mud or clay that is brought to life. Well, that's a picture of that rebirth once that old man is completely put off and we go through that Golam. He saw our unformed body. Well, now he's forming it, because once that caterpillar goes in there, the vast majority of that DNA, except for some legs and antenna that just gets rearranged, actually dies. It produces a chemical to kind of dissolve itself, and the DNA begins to rebuild into a brand new creature.
I wonder if maybe the combination could also, I think that, Abba can teach us many different levels and many different ways of understanding this, all pointing to him. But like Tim had mentioned in the study, the casting down of Satan, and the fall, those kinds of things. Perhaps if we take a look at it from the view that you presented, Sylvia, there is that had already happened, and there was a breakthrough or a birthing of Yahusha into the earth to set up another kingdom within what's known as Satan's world, or Satan's kingdom, to basically get authority over that kingdom.
Mario, I do not see anywhere in the Genesis 1 anywhere where it says that the earth was damaged or made evil by being the abyss that Hasatan and his angels were kept in.
Yeah.
And to me, that's adding to the word. If it's not in 1:1, it's not in Genesis 1:1 or anywhere else.
So did Yahuah inspire Mosheh to record the wrong words then? If those were not the right words, why didn't he put Leil there first instead of Hoshek?
Well, I'm hearing what Donna is saying is that
Leil would cover the darkness.
Yeah, I believe that what Donna just said is, right on the money, that, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, but perhaps verse 2 was part of this birthing process of bringing Yahuwah's kingdom into, Satan may have already been on the planet. It doesn't mean that it was necessarily dark and water was everywhere. But he was definitely kicked out of heaven at some point. But so that could have been, after 1:1 or during 1:2 or or whatever. But we know that it happened at some point. I guess one day we'll be able to figure that out.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you, Tim, for a great presentation. It was a very good presentation. Let's see, I see something else in the chat there. Now that we just switched off, I saw something there. But thank you, Sylvia, for what you had shared. Thank you, Charlene, for helping putting this whole thing together and making it happen. And I most of all want to thank Abba that he's called us to investigate and to study and to be part of it. I think that there is some history in the making, and I think that we're part of that history. And I feel really honored and blessed to be a part of what he's doing. So thank you, everyone. And mostly
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Abba. Yeah. So next week, I guess, keep your eye open for the weekly update and review, and it'll be written in there what's going on next week. We try to get those for Covenant Calendar Club out on Wednesdays, and I guess there was some technical challenges with Torah to the Tribes hosts, and they didn't go out automatically. So by the middle or the end of the day on Wednesday, I contacted Corey, our technician, and said we didn't get any invite. So the following day we got both, one for the Shabbat Fellowship and one for Covenant Calendar Club, because he manually had to push them through. So hopefully that's fixed, and they'll come out on Wednesday, which gives you some time in between to
Mario, once again, can you tell me where you're posting? I didn't get it the last time.
Okay. Yeah. If you're you didn't get the Covenant Calendar Club update.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay. Check, if you would, your not just your spam mail, but possibly even your promotions, which is just a fancy name for spam mail. It could be in either one of those. But he manually sent it out. I got mine. Tamara got hers on Thursday instead of on Wednesday. So it might be in one of those boxes, perhaps. And if you're not getting them, let me know. Shoot me an email or something, and I'll give you that link that they're using to subscribe for the newsletter things, and we'll try to re-enter it in there or something.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you everyone for joining us and for helping and being part of what's going on. I wish you all a blessed Shabbat tomorrow. I pray that the presence of Yahuah would just permeate not only your house, but your very beings. And for those of you that want to be part of the fellowship portion of your Shabbat time, we'll be seeing you tomorrow. So,
Thanks, you guys. Have a blessed night. We'll see you tomorrow.
thank you.
Shabbat shalom to everybody tomorrow.
Shalom, shalom.
Bye, shalom, Vivian.
I love you, Vivian.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Good night.